from all around the world come together and share their knowledge with their colleagues. Today, our special guest is Dr. Parsa Zadeh. Welcome, Dr. Zadeh. It is an honor to have you with us today. Just my personal knowledge from Dr. Zadeh is that he's a practitioner, he's an educator, he's a scientist, he's an inventor. But I'm going to go ahead and read all of his accomplishment. So Dr. Zadeh is a founder and CEO of Dental Evolution Incorporation. He's an inventor of Implant Nova, is a dental implant system. He's a master in Academy of General Dentistry, and he's a fellow of International Congress of Oral Implantology. He was an associate professor at USC School of Dentistry for 14 years, and he's lectured the Department of Restorative Dentistry in the section of occlusion. He's also an inventor of the TITAC attachment system, fridge, friction grip bridge system, simple lift, sinus lift system, and Turboguide drill stopper and irrigation pump guide system. Welcome, Dr. Zadeh.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Javed, for the kind words. Hopefully, I can share a few insights to the Implant Nova system, and hopefully this will help our colleagues expand their capabilities in dental implant system. Today's subject is Implant Nova self-grafting, self-osteotomizing, and self-osteodensifying implants. Now, remember, this system is from 2011. I filed the patent for this in July of 2011. Many of these features have been recreated by other companies, and they have come up as late as 2019 and 2018, which is fine. I mean, obviously, if they put enough research and development, they would have come to the same conclusions that I came to based on the experience that I had over the years and the research that we did here at Dental Evolutions. So let me take you through the presentation. Okay. So in terms of disclosure, Dr. Javed also already mentioned these things. I am the inventor of Implant Nova and Simple Lift and Coflex and Fridge, TITAC, Turboguide, Squeeze, Release, Torque Wrench. And I'm the founder of Dental Evolutions, Inc. So everything that I talk about are my products, and I benefit from promoting them. So that was the disclosure. Now let's go back to the principle of implantology. I've tried to simplify everything that there is to know about dental implants into one sentence. We know Brannemark discovered that titanium integrates with bone under certain conditions. Okay, he discovered it and he started doing dental implants. So now we know that if you place a piece of clean titanium in a healthy bone and keep it immobile for a few months, it will osseointegrate. Okay, so we need clean titanium, healthy bone, immobile for a few months, and we have our implant osseointegration. Every failure in implantology is because one or more of these elements are violated. Okay? Anything that you think of is because of the violation of one of these four. What makes an implant system better than another depends on how well that system can provide and support these elements. We have heard that all implants integrate, some cheaper than others. That's true. That's a very true statement. Also, some implants integrate in a more variety of situations than others. What I have found is with Implant Nova, I'm able to place implants in a much more situations than I used to with the prior implant system that I used. In fact, in our office, the only qualifying factor for getting an implant is if they want it, they need it, and if they can pay for it. There is absolutely no contraindication for implants. I'll show you some cases now. Let's take one of those features, for instance, osteodensifying. This seems to be a very hot topic, and a lot of special gadgets are being made and sold for thousands of dollars. What I'm trying to show you is that this implant system does that without any of those additional tools, and merely because of the shape of it and the way it's designed. Let's watch a video. So here is a patient who comes in for implants on the upper maxillary area. The ridge is very thin. So as I'm placing the incision, I make sure I bring some keratinized gingiva from the palatal area. Now note how thin that ridge is. It's almost like knife edge. And more importantly, we've got the sinus right 4 or 5 millimeters above it. You can see the bluishness of the sinus right here. So this is the height of the bone we have, and the width is hardly 2 millimeters. I'm using the high-speed handpiece. Of course, it's an electric handpiece, so it's about 200,000 RPM. I'm marking where the implants are going to go and clean the periosteum from it. I'm making the core osteotomy with the drill. Here with a little disc, I'm splitting the ridge and creating some vertical relief to allow the ridge. The gentleman here is in his 70s, so the bone is very brittle, and without those reliefs, I don't think the procedure would have been successful, and I think it's likely that the bone would have broken off. But the vertical reliefs definitely help that. I don't have much control over the music, so sorry if it's a little too loud. So here I split the ridge, I created the vertical reliefs, and I'm just taking the osteotomy up to the floor of the sinus. Now I will show you later through many slides how ideal this implant design is for crestal sinus lifts. And many times you don't need anything. You just have to break the sinus floor upwards. What I'm doing right now with this simple lift internal punch. So I'm just breaking the sinus lift up. These are very similar to what the Summers osteotomes, with the difference that the blade, the cutting edge, is only on one side and there is a bumper on the other side. The implant is picked up with the special carrier system that we have for the system that locks into the implant. And the shape of the implant, the way it's going in, gradually would expand the ridge. You can see here how this ridge is getting expanded. So this was just a slide with the osteotomy disc. Here it is, another implant. See how nicely it gets picked up. We are using the latest tieback system. No more of those fragile vials. These are much longer lasting, and there's a newer way of packing and storing dental and orthopedic screws. From the pouch, they get picked up like this with the implant carrier. See, there's no chance of the implant dropping because of the special feature of this carrier, which I will show later. The implants have some algorithmic curvature that gradually expand the ridge as they're going in. It's not a simple taper. I call this implant the most sophisticated design because we spent 2 years full time with an engineer going over every little feature. And those features, of course, we enlarged 10 times by a 3D printer. And this is in 2011 to see the details and make the improvements on it. See, some of the systems, very difficult to remove the carrier and place it back. Here, the implants are placed, the cover screws are in. Now we go to the closure of the wound. I know this part has nothing to do with the implant nova, but knowing dentists, they want to see how the thing ended. So I'm creating relieving incision here in the microperiosteum. The music will be over soon. So here we put the first layer of collagen, then I put my bone graft because now that ridge is very thin, so we need about 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter bone on the buccal and lingual of it. This is the buccal, and here is for the lingual part. I cover it with collagen, and then there's a lingual, bone on the lingual, collagen. On very top of it, I put Teflon membrane so that if there is an opening of the wound, and often it is, the bone graft doesn't get exposed to the oral environment. And of course, I was able to do a primary closure, but if it opens up, that piece of Teflon is going to help. Now, see, if you notice, the ridges which are as thin as you can see here, see how thin they are, they can be expanded, or I don't know, you call it osteodensified or whatever it is. We don't need any special tool. We can place our implants nicely in this situation without using any other tool than the implant itself. And you can see here nicely the area is filled with blood. We can put some bone graft if you want on it. This is another case. The ridge is relatively thin here, and as you see here, the implant has created the expansion of the ridge. So people ask me if we have a ridge expansion kit. We don't need it because the shape of the implant, look at the shape of this implant. This has algorithmic taper. So the way this taper comes up, and algorithmic means as this curvature gets wider, each unit of length that this goes up, the amount of curvature becomes half. So here there is suddenly expansion, then from here to here, if there is whatever degree of expansion, from this part to the next part, the amount of expansion is half. So it works extremely well for ridge expansions. Now, I like you to look at this animation and see how actually Implant Nova does this. And I will show you later the different features that make this possible. Here it is. We do a single osteotomy going down. The implant with its tapered feature comes in, and as it's going in, as I've shown you on those videos, it's expanding the bone. Also, it is shaving the bone to create room for those blades. The bone shavings get condensed, that's your osteodensifying, around the cortical area of the implant, and you'll have the best self-grafting, best autograft around this implant after you place it. So therefore, that I call it self-osteotomizing because it made its own osteotomy. It's self-grafting because it takes the bone graft and puts it around itself, and self-osteo densifying because it condenses that bone around it. And these implants are made to be placed just subcrestal because of this bone easement. I will show you now in the next slide. So that's why I call it the most sophisticated design. Let's see why. Now, some of the features of these implants I took from previous implant system based on the 60 years of science that was developed for implants. These are the features that existed in other implant systems back in 2011, and I took those features. Internal cone connection. Our connection is about 50-year-old, and it's been shown to have the minimum micro leakage. So I did not create the connection. The connection is that of Astro Aqua. It's a single connection for all implant diameters, and I adapted that from Astro Aqua. There is uniform implant design among all implant diameters and platforms. So once you go through the learning curve and learn how to deal with this implant, you will find that from 3 millimeter to 7.5 millimeter wide, every implant has the same design, but in different proportions. It goes in with very high insertion torque and primary stability. In fact, 80 Newton is pretty normal for this implant to be the insertion torque. And no, it does not cause any necrosis because the osteotomy is created by the implant blades itself, and its exact size of the implant. It's zero pressure, basically. And of course, a non-cutting tip. Platform switching, which we now know is a big advantage for dental implants. I have two types of coating on this implant. The top of it is coarse resorbable media blasting for ideal osseointegration. And these parts that are the cutting blades, I have also blasted them, but with the finer blast media, so that it does not take from the sharpness of the blades. Because remember, this is like your drill. It's doing it the osteotomy. Then we used the 3D printer back in 2011. It was very, very new. And I remember no store had it. So we special ordered this system from the manufacturer, and we had someone and they were selling it only out of their warehouse in New York. So we had to pay someone $1,000 to go to the warehouse, buy this, pack it, and send it to us so that we can have it when we wanted to have it. Again, this is 2011. 3D printers were just becoming affordable for regular folks. Before that, they were in like hundreds of thousands of dollar range, but this tabletop model was became available then. And through this tabletop unit, I kept making models like this. I don't know if you can see the model in my hand. Yeah, thank you. So we made 10 times models like this so we could see every little detail. Now you'll see we have progressive pitch, synchronous fine grooves here. We spent a lot of time to make sure that all of these ended up with a perfect circle, no cut, how these grooves ended up in the surface, how deep these grooves are, and this is where the self-grafting feature of this implant is. If you notice the direction of this vertical flutes, It's the opposite direction of the implant's seating. We seat the implant with a clockwise motion, but these are anti-clockwise. That means the bone shavings, which are created by these sharp blades, you can see these are sharp blades, they are channeled into this and they are pushed down into the cortical area of the bone. And that's why it's osteodensifying. Okay, it's self-grafting because see, the core osteotomy was the diameter of the core of this implant. Okay, the rest of this diameter is made by the implant itself through these negative rake angle blades. Again, this is a feature that I came up with back in 2011. I've seen this feature created through independent research by other companies that have come up with their implants in 2018 and 2019. In August of 2019, an implant came, and with a lot of fanfare that they did independent research and years of research and development, and they came up with this, which is fine. Again, what they have done is a validation of what I came up with in 2011. Okay, so they did independent research and came up that this is the best way for 2019 for their implant to be designed. So another feature, while I have the model in my hand, is this bone easement here. Now, all the other implants, they have straight shoulder like this or straight down. But this curvature I created here, I will show you on the x-rays, that will encourage bone growth over this implant. And the idea of crestal bone loss, it becomes a totally mute point, because the way this implant is designed, it's actually encouraging bone growth on top of it. And of course, the connection is the same connection from 3 millimeter to 7.5 millimeter. I don't think other systems have the same connection for as narrow as 3 millimeter implants. They have it for 3.3 and up, but not 3. Again, we did a lot of engineering to be able to come up with that. So if you notice, thank you. So if you notice with this design, this is the design that, as I said, we configured back in 2011, and now other implant companies have come up to the same conclusion with independent research. I called it back then a smart bone management system. They have other terms that are similar to it, but smart bone management system is a phrase that I put in the text of my patent back in 2011. Then I explained about these flutes and how the direction of them is anti-clockwise. The other features, the double blast media, and this part of it, as I said, is progressive pitch synchronous microthread. What does that mean? That means down here, it starts with a certain depth of the groove, and as it comes to the crest, the depth of these grooves becomes less and less because the core is expanding and it becomes a perfect circle. This is the feature that makes this so perfect for crestal sinus lift. I will show you. And in as little as 1 or 2 millimeter of sinus floor, we are able to stabilize this implant, and this is purely because of this feature. Again, I'll show you later in the slides. Now look at this bone easement here. Look at this here, how the bone has grown over the implant. So I draw an implant on the enlargement of that photo. You see, this is where the implant is. This circle of bone did not exist when we placed the implant. There was no way this could exist. Okay, but now when I go back 3 months later to expose it, look how the bone has grown over that easement. Now, do you think with this bone growth over the easement, we should worry about crestal bone loss? Typically, you get crestal bone loss because the bone is the thinnest and the weakest at the crest. But here, if you do the cross section, the bone would be the thickest at the crest of the implants. We have placed over, not we, I mean, I and other users have placed over 4,000 Implant Nova implants over the years. And we have seen this crestal bone grow very consistently and very reliably. The implant design works in presence of infection. I know a lot of doctors that they say, oh, if there is infection, we bone graft and we have the patient come back in 3 to 6 months. No. Okay. As I said, if the patient walks in, they need an implant, they want an implant, and they're willing to pay for it, they're going to get an implant. Okay. We don't care if it's infected, if it's a tooth that has to come out, if it, been infected for a long time, that's not an issue. If patient is needing the implant and they're willing to pay for it, they're getting it. This is a case, here's a pretty involved infection. I mean, it's not only periapical, tooth was probably cracked, so there was infection from the apex all the way to the neck of the tooth. This is very, very routine, and I think it should be routine in every dentist's office. Patient comes back with a toothache, take an x-ray. Yes, it's an abscess. The pattern of the abscess shows it's a cracked root. Take the tooth out, put the implant. Here, I even put the healing cap on it. And this is at time of restoration. You can see the bone is starting to grow over that easement. And this is at time of restoration. This is a year later. And this probably, I took the last one 3 years later. Now look how nicely the bone is over this easement. Now, do you really think this implant can get loose or come out when you've got bone not only all around here, but you've got bone over the top of it also, or like this? I don't think so. Then this is a ideal design for short applications. I know there are some dentists that are shying away from sinus grafting and they want to use short implants. This is perfect design for that. Look at this. This is a patient that, I don't know what his issue was, but he did not want sinus grafts. So I said, okay. So we placed 2 implants on one side and 2 implants on the other. And this is now about 2 years out, and he's happy. Everything is secure, and this is very much similar to those crown root ratio that the Bicon implants show, and those work, and this works as well. The only thing, I think this would work more reliably because this is actually screwed in at the time of placement, and because it's screwed in, you get much more stability than being punched in. But nevertheless, the structure shows that it supports the crown root ratio, which is out of the proportion we are used to seeing. This is implant design is ideal for immediate placement after extraction. Now, as I said, 99, I mean, it's very, very rare. Maybe once every 3 months, I come across a situation that I'm extracting a tooth and I cannot stabilize the implant in its place because of the infection is so widespread that there's absolutely nothing to put the implant in. But otherwise, even if there is 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter of bone, we can make this implant stable. And invariably, as I said, I do this as an immediate implant. Every case. The only way that it's not an immediate implant is because the patient is coming without that tooth. If the tooth is already missing, okay, I'm going to go into solid bone. Otherwise, if I'm taking a tooth out, the implant goes in the same day. If it gets stable enough, it's getting the healing cap also. In the past, I've done it that I've put even the abutment on it and even loaded it that same day. And that's not what I recommend, but the point I'm trying to make is we can minimize the number of surgeries and visits of the patient. Here's a case. The tooth is infected. We're taking it out. Here's the tooth out. Here's the socket. You can see there is a septum here. It's always a great thing to have that septum. Take out the implant, place the implant right at the septum, close it. This is the x-ray of that case. I put some tricalcium phosphate on top of it, and invariably, if it's open like that, we can put some Teflon. We should put some Teflon. You can't leave it open, and then loosely bring the edges of the wound together. There's another case. Patient comes with an abscess. You can see the distal root is fractured here. Again, this is a routine case. Patient comes in same day that the patient is there. You make sure he can, stay another hour in the office, get the payment, take the tooth out, put the implant in there. This is the implant at the time of placement with the healing cap. This is about a week later. You can see the healing cap is there, the Teflon there. This is at the time of restoration. Now, I tested this implant. It was integrated, but see, there's still not complete bone formation here. Is that a problem? No. This is because it's just still immature. Now, we go back a year or 2 years later, you see the bone has grown where we did not have the bone. See, this area did not have the bone before. And now we have bone grown over there. Now, do you really think crestal bone loss is an issue here? How can that be? Because the bone is thicker right at the crest as it is further down. And this is the clinical outcome. This is where that drainage was. So it healed by scarring. Here we're going to go over another lower molar. I remember a lecture, the doctor said the most common implant placement is a lower first molar. That's the first tooth that goes bad, first tooth that goes abscess. So that's the most common. And I found that to be true too. So here it is, lower first molar that has gone bad. As you can see, take the tooth out. Then with a high speed, I go clean it up. I try not to reflect the flap so that the mucoperiosteum will have the nutrition both from down here and the bone that's attached to it. With the high speed, I clean out the remnants of the PDL and any infection. Here, I'm blessed with septum. I mean, it's very rare that you have a septum this wide, but here I was blessed with it, so I flattened it. I made a little mark on it, as you can see here. There's a mark on the center of the septum. There it is. I usually do initially start the osteotomy with a round carbide burr. Here's a drill, just an x-ray to see if I'm, okay in terms of parallelism. It looks okay. Then I enlarge the osteotomy, the head drill, and then the implant. Here, it was so secure that I was comfortable. I placed the abutment on it too. I said, okay, I'm going to save a healing cap, although they don't cost much, not to me at least. But I wanted to see if I could do it, so I did it. And here's the x-ray right after. This is another view. I measured the tightness of this at the time of placement. It was -3 on the periotome. If you're familiar with the periotome, anything minus means integration, plus means mobility. So anything less than -1 is good. The best you can see is like -8. But -3 is pretty good. -1, I would wait another month or two. So here it is at -3. Then I think it was a month later that it was -3.3. So I see it's healing. So I placed the crown on it, and you can see bone is beginning to grow. Also, this implant design is ideal for crestal sinus lift. Now, you can imagine how easy it is for us to do an crestal sinus lift, that sometimes when I'm doing 4 or 5 implants, I don't even mention it to the patient that I'm doing it, and I don't even charge for it because it really takes maybe 5 minutes more of my time. And instead of explaining all of that to the patient, that, oh, I'm going to break the sinus and do that, I just say, okay, you're going to get some implants. If you have to, move around stuff there, we will do it. Don't get me wrong, we do give informed consent. If you're using bovine or allograft bone, I will tell the patient that's what I'm going to do. But most of the time, I'm using tricalcium phosphate anyway, and that's not even a organic material for me to want to get consent from the patient. So let me take you over a few of those cases. So I also have designed this sinus lift kit. It's 5 instruments. First, there is a sinus punch. As I said, very similar to the Summers, but I'll show you later, with the blade on one side and a bumper on the other side. Then I have these sinus dilators that, the bone in that area is always soft and can always be expanded by pressure. So it's does not make sense to use a drill to make that osteotomy the size that we wanted, because the bone is not that dense. And then there's an instrument here, spreader, that I'm able to manipulate the membrane once the opening has been has been dilated, so that we can place the implant. It's a very, very simple kit. It does not have measurements on it. Everything is pre-measured for 10 millimeter. The concept I can explain later is because you really don't need more than 10 millimeter of implant in that area. No point confusing you with like 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 millimeter. The width is predetermined. It's either for 4.5 or a 5.5 millimeter diameter implant. You don't want to put a 3 millimeter in the sinus. So it makes a lot of sense. So here's a case. The patient comes with this situation. Look at the upper right. The patient has been edentulous in this area for decades now. So this is that area. I cut the bridge off. Oh no, that's this area here. When we take the bridge off, look how thin the sinus is. This is the floor of the sinus. Here we have maybe 2 to 3 millimeter, if that, of bone. So here it is. I placed the implants on the other sites that there were more bone. Here's where the sinus is. I'm beginning to make a little osteotomy with the round burr. Here is the floor of the sinus, the bluish membrane that you can see through. This is the punch. Now look at the direction. See, this is 45-degree angle here. This is the blade that cuts, and then on the bottom here, there is a bumper that won't let this to go through and through the sinus. And this is the pre-measured 10 millimeter that you need. So with the punch, we break the floor of the sinus. With the spreader, we manipulate it so that you can see here is that island of the bone. I don't like those sinus lift system that drills the bone here and we'll be left with just the membrane and no island. I think this island of bone contributes a lot to create the roof of your sinus lift area, and not having it makes that membrane much more prone to tear. So I prefer this to all the systems that use a drill to create that sinus lift. In this case, actually, I used some PRF into the sinus. Did not use even tricalcium phosphate. So nothing from outside was used for this patient. And people love that. Oh, I use your own blood. And I created this fibrin net that I put in your body. They love it. They love it. PRF, very sexy. Here's the implant now. It's going into that area, and the perfect circle of the top of the implant will make this stable. Now, I'll show you later, there is no way many other systems can be done this securely and this reliably. Here, I even put this part of it subcrestal. But see, this perfect circle here is the widest part of this implant. So it seals this off perfectly and makes the implant secure. This is where the implant went in. And look here. This is the sinus lift with the PRF. And look how thin the floor of the sinus is on this side. There is no way these other designs can do that. And this is on the other side, even thinner. I mean, look how thin that thing is. And, you know, mind you, if the implant goes in and it's moving, I'm not leaving the implant there. So I like to get some stability from the implant before I close the flap over it. So the fact that these implants are in is a sign that it's already secure, and it has at least 15 Newton centimeter of resistance. Now look, this is a diagram showing how Implanova can be stable in a floor of the sinus that's only about 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter thick. Okay, and then the rest of it we can fill with either blood or fibrin or whatever else. Now, this is why in very thin bone, we can put the implant over there and look how the implant itself is pushing the floor of the sinus up and give us the sinus lift. Now, look at these are 3 implants from 3 major manufacturers. I won't name any, obviously, but you all know it. These are 3 very, very major. This is the largest company, second largest company, and probably the largest foreign company. This is foreign too. But look at their designs. Invariably, the top of their implants is narrower than the widest part of the implant. The top of this implant is narrower than this. So for this implant to go in, it will enlarge the osteotomy to this degree, and then you'll have suddenly a hollow area. Look at this one. For this implant to go in, the bone is expanded this much, and then this narrower area goes in. Oh, look at this, is absolutely insane. I mean, this implant to go in will make the osteotomy as thick as here, and then the top of it will be this. Now, what's going to happen if you use these implants in the sinus lifts? Look, there is no way this implant can be stable when you have an osteotomy which is wider than the part of it that can get engaged in the bone. So that's why the Implanova is perfect for crestal sinus lifts, and a lot of these other designs are just not suitable, because that's why they are promoting so much lateral lift, or they say, oh, you need 5 millimeter for crestal sinus lift. Yeah, with this design, you do need 5 millimeter at least, but with the Implanova, 1 or 2 is enough. Let me show you another example. Patient comes in with an abscess, the crown is temporarily cemented by another dentist. Take a CT, look the thinness of the bone above the root. This is the root of the tooth. There is an abscess here. This is the cortical bone, and that's the sinus. Now, do you think any of those other designs can possibly get secure in this thin cortical bone? I mean, this is, I don't know, it's not even 1 millimeter. But again, patient came in, needed an implant, wanted an implant, and she paid for it. So she got an implant. This is another view, the periapical image of it. And this is after the extraction. The implant is secure. The sinus lift here is done by the implant itself. And of course, it was a 3-rooted tooth. So I filled that whole coronal area with tricalcium phosphate and closed it. This is at the time of restoration, which is about 3 months later. You can see the sinus lift is getting shaped very, very nicely. I don't like to put so much bone in here. until the patient's eye gets affected. This is more than enough sinus lift for this implant to be stable. No need to fill up half the sinus as we've seen other people do. And this is that same implant. I don't know, maybe it looks like 2-3 months later. Um, this is the clinical crown that went on it. And you can see the bone is starting to grow over the easement. Look at this. Look at this. This is perfect. Now, do I worry about crestal bone loss for this? No. Now, I know that the bone loss is because one of the factors of the bone loss is the micro leakage from here, and the irritation that comes from this gap. But remember, this connection has been in use for 40 years now. Okay, this is the Astra connection. For 40, it's been studied thoroughly by many people. There is a German study that we have it on our website that shows this and that of ankylose have minimum micro leakage. So I chose a connection that has deep cone connection, not a bevel, so that it has minimum micro leakage here. And with the minimum micro leakage and the bone here, I don't think this bone is going to go anywhere. This implant is ideal for immediate loading. Now, we've been told that there's only one implant in the whole wide world that can be immediately loaded and nothing else, but we all know that's not the case. So here's an implant over case that we did and we immediately loaded. I like to introduce to you here another system that I have created called Fridge, which is Friction Grip Bridge. It's a simple answer to the cumbersome screw retained full arch implant prosthesis. So basically we are doing all on 6. And this system, there are no screw holes. There's no implant level impression. There's no jig verification. There's no milled bar. There's minimum bone removal, 100% accurate fit. It's patient fixed and dentist removable. And it's done through these fridge caps that I made to go over the implants. And we pick these up with the teeth, so very similar to what we have been doing all these years with locator abutments. So here's a case. Patient comes in with broken and infected teeth. Open up the flaps, start removing the granulation tissues, and then with the nibbler, I'm removing the bone that's sticking out, keeping it for later use. I'm very cheap, so if I can use a patient's bone, I'm not going to pay hundreds of dollars for some cow's bone in a bottle. So I'll try to use patient's own, and there's plenty of it when you're doing these full mouth cases. Then I'm beginning to mark the location of the implants. The location of the implants are marked like this. This is the part that I think is going into the sinus. Now I'd like to introduce to you another invention of mine, which is called Turboguide guided surgery system. Personally, I've never done a guided case. I don't see how is that necessary. But if you guys want to do guided, this is a system that you can use guided. And I assume one of the problems with guided system is that the irrigation from your handpiece doesn't get through the guide and doesn't reach the bone. How do I know that? Because some of the smart doctors out there have created another one of these tubes under the guide and connected that tube to that, and basically they're irrigating it separately. So I designed this turbo guide system, and the direction of these flutes again is against the direction of the turning of the drills. So as we're drilling it, the irrigation that hits the top of it gets carried through the guide and goes where it's needed. So you don't need to do any special irrigating technique for these. And with this system, you can even place the implant through your guide. Again, we did a lot of research to make this as simple as possible and as universal as possible so that it can be used both as a drill stopper and a guided system. So here's another demonstration of it that I did these lab tests. This is how the drill goes into the guide. And as we place the guide here, you can see the irrigation is hitting the turbine and it's being carried over to the other underside of the guide around the drill. Any lab can fabricate these. You just have to tell them the diameter. And we have specifications on our site that if you want to use it, you can use. Here it is one of those drill stoppers at work. Now, again, I don't usually use it, but this was a good situation because we had a limited space between the crestal valvular bone and the sinus floor. I didn't want to accidentally break through it, so I put the drill stopper and I went to the depth without worrying about going too much. And here's another use there. Now, these are another view of the simple lift punches that we use for sinus lift. You see how one side of it is the blade, the other side of it is flat. So this cuts through and this prevents it from running into the sinus. Pre-measured to 10 millimeter. Okay. And that's, I think, the punch, and then the dilator. After the punch, the dilator goes in and we dilate it. Then this is what we see. This is after the dilation. Then with the spreader, we take the bone, we put it there. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our implant carrier that I've been showing also so far. Our implant carrier has a little steel spring ring here that locks into one of the features of this connection so that you can carry the implant without dropping it. I once dropped an implant in my shoe when I was using the older systems. This will make sure the implant doesn't drop. And also, once it's seated, you can very easily move the carrier side to side and remove it. Again, our packaging is the latest Tyvek double pouch Tyvek packaging, much superior to the vials and all these other stuff that has been in use since the 60s. So this whole thing is sterile. It's dropped on the bracket and the operator will hold the implant like this. We have made special gadgets that when we put these implants in these smaller secondary pouches, they have their mouth towards the opening. Okay, there's a special device that when we're packaging it, we use it. So as you rip the top of this package open, the mouth of the implant is always facing out. So you can easily just place the carrier in it and pick it up. So you pick it up, you can easily remove it. This is that same case, the implant in the sinus. Here you can see the sinus lift. Oftentimes, if you have this much thickness, you don't even need to put anything in the osteotomy because all of these blades are cutting the soft bone here, and that soft bone, because of the direction of the flutes, is taken apically and gets condensed here. Now look at the torque. When I'm using this immediate loading, these implants are loaded up, are going in with 80 Newton torque. This 80 Newton for an immediate placement. Okay, so then I put the abutments and the fridge caps. The prosthetic torque for the entire Implant Nova system is only 20 Newton centimeter. Everything in Implant Nova system is only 20 Newton centimeter, the prosthetic part. There is only one screw for the entire system. There's only one driver for the entire system. And here's Torquenon 20. These are the 6 implants in place, and the caps are ready to be picked up. I'm trying in the hollowed denture. We place the silicone washers on, put the pickup material on them, put the pickup inside the denture, take it out. Now it's picked up, then we can suture it. And here it was, upper and lower immediate load, all on 12, 6 on the top, 6 on the bottom implant. Now I have 1-day courses that I teach this technique. Okay, it's not as simple as these 4 slides that I showed you, but everyone can do it. If you're already doing your implants, you can come for the 1-day course, and you will learn how to do this in your office. This is much less expensive, much easier for the patient, and you can do it in the same day without having a lab on site. Another system that I have made is for removable appliances. I call it TiTac. This is a metal to metal, so it's titanium attachment. That's why TiTac. Metal to metal system does not have any nylon parts to wear out. It's pretty retentive, so only 2 of them is enough. The beauty of the system is your implants can be as angulated as 60 degrees to each other, and the system works. Okay, so when you're placing them on the canine area of resorbed ridges, it's very difficult to get those implants straight up and down. So even if it's up to 60 degrees angle to each other, the system works. This is one of the cases, and this is the finished case. She's very happy with 2 TiTac in each arch. It's very, very, very retentive. The latest invention that we've had, we spent almost a year and about $100,000 to design this squeeze release torque wrench. The beauty of this torque wrench is, with this one screw that you open it, and you can use the same hex you use for your implant prosthetics. This comes out in 3 pieces: the screw, this bow, and the body. There is no inside to any of these pieces, so they can be thoroughly cleaned and sterilized. Now, all the other torque wrenches that I have seen, they have a spring on it, or they have some inside space that you have to use a bottle cleaner or something to reach. Otherwise, you can't get the gunk out of it. But here, there is no inside. And another beauty of this is, if you use it with our own ratchet wheels, the ratchet wheel gets locked into it, and unless you press this bow down towards it, that's why it's called squeeze release torque wrench, it won't let the ratchet wheel out. Now, this is very important. How many times it happens that you're using the ratchet in the mouth and it just comes off of the wheel? With this torque wrench and the ratchet wheels that we have made, it becomes one piece until you squeeze on the bow and release it. So again, a lot of engineering and design went into this, but we have it both for 20 and for 100 Newton actually force. Of course, all the regular existing ratchet wheels fit this very well, and the squeeze release works, but it doesn't lock it as good as if we use our own. I want to thank the Global Summit and Dr. Shah for the opportunity for me to present this. Thank you. We have the Global Academy of Oral Implantology. We have courses for beginners, and the course that I'm mostly proud of are the fridge courses that we can show you how to do the single-day implant supported fixed prosthesis. Thank you.
Oh, great, Dr. Zadeh. Thank you so much. Uh, Very informative webinar. Thank you for sharing. There's some couple of questions here, a few questions that I'm
Sure.
going to read out for you. One question was regarding the fridge, the friction grip system, asking if is there any is that available for any other system?
No.
Okay, so just solely
No.
for your Implant Nova.
Well, it's only for this connection. Now, the my connection is Astra Aqua. Now, if you want to pay 5 times as much and buy Astra implants, you can use the system with that.
Sounds
If you want to use a generic of Astra, you might as well buy our implants. Our prices are less than the generics out there.
makes sense. So another question here. Thank you. So 80 newtons is a lot of force right there. Is that implant uh, is a specific titanium material, or is it just thicker, or because most of the implant probably would crack at that 80, right?
Newton. No, they won't crack. It may flower up. But see, those issues used to be for the time that we used commercially pure titanium. And the older implants that I started my implantology on, like Straumann, Astra, all of these, they used to use the commercially pure, which is type 4 titanium. That is much, much softer than what we use today. Right now, we use type 23 interstitial alloy. Okay, the type 23 interstitial alloy is a much harder titanium than the commercially pure. And that is the reason we can come up with one small connection that works both small, is small enough for anterior use and wide enough and strong enough for the posterior use. That's why a lot of the older systems had to have different diameters of connections, because if they wanted it small enough for the anteriors, it was too weak for the posteriors. And if it's strong enough for the posterior, it would be too wide for the anterior. But with the type 23 interstitial alloy use, you can make it as small as anterior. And obviously, we've done fatigue testing on it. They're as good for the posteriors. And the issue of flowering for force, it's not applicable to the implants, at least our connection and our implant. Now, if there's a connection that is even wider than the one we are using, that may be an issue. But I have never had an implant break like that.
Perfect.
Never. I haven't heard anyone breaking the implant either. Not that we don't have failures or this works in every case, but that issue has not come up yet.
That's great. That's great to know. So this next question. So yeah, the implant, is obviously very similar when we look at it. It looks, because it's subcrestal, right? So it looks like ankylose. And so, what would you say, comparing that to the regular implants? What, as far as the bone resorption? Because mostly the uh, the, the problem with most implant is not that they all fall out. Is the problem is, as you said. So if you don't have one of those principles, like not having enough bone, not having, basically place an implant, titanium inside the bone, it'll take if there's no movement and you have enough bone, so what would you say, as far as the bone resorption, or periimplantitis in the first couple of millimeters, comparing this implant to other implants that you've used in the past?
Okay. As I think I showed through a number of different cases, with this implant, if placed crestal or slightly subcrestally, you have actually crestal bone gain. You mentioned ankylose. This idea I got from ankylose. Okay, this implant I designed in 2011. Ankylose had been doing this years prior to that. So
Sure.
when I saw that when ankylose goes subcrestal and you have bone growing over it, I said, okay, I like to have that feature, but then I improved on it. See, implant ankylosis top of the implant is flat line. I made that bone easement that would further enhance the bone creation on top of the implant. So ankle is a good, implant. our implant costs 1/5 of Ankylos, and it's a much newer implant with much better features. I mean, Ankylos is a great implant, don't get me wrong, but it's a 25-year-old design, and it has a lot of good features, but a lot of good features also that we have learned since then does not apply to Ankylos.
Got it. Got it. Well, thank you very much. And the last thing here was somebody asked if maybe you could add a link to this video for your website, for your products, or maybe after we can just add it.
That I will leave to Ashur to do it. Denvolution.com. I mean, I don't know how technically to do that, but if
once you go back and look at your video, you can probably just type in there, just like you do on Facebook. So
I think this has the link already on it. If you look at that implantedu.org, that's our GAOI.
perfect.
So I think if you
it's already
there. It should go. It went to some different place now, but the site is implantedu.org or denvolution.com.
Right.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Zadeh. It was an honor.
Thank you.
And you have a great day.